All right, let the Leinster post-mortem begin. Well, we need to go there, don't we? It has to be explained. There's logic that needs to be found. There is a cadaver that needs to be examined. There's broken hearts that need to be mended from a Leinster point of view. And there's a lot of questions that need answers on the coach, on the tactics, on what it means for British and Irish Lions. There's a lot to pick over. And I am still with my friend in, and by the way, let me just say, English market towns, absolutely stunning. And on a May bank holiday weekend, I can't think of many better places in the world. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm in Marlow at the minute. I've just come for a walk. And all I can think about is that game yesterday. Well, actually, I say that. All I can think about is that game yesterday and some of the Bond layer-esque houses that there are along the riverfront here. Unreal. Check out these places. Anyway, yes. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Give the video a thumbs up, hit subscribe. And yeah, get your comments down below, like I say. I mean, let's look at some facts. Leinster conceded, oh my word. Sorry, I'm just gonna show you that house again. Crazy. These places are nuts. It's frightening to think how much they cost. Anyway, by the by, Leinster conceded 5 tries. Northampton Saints, well, let's put it around the other way. Northampton Saints managed to score 5 tries against a team that hadn't conceded a single point in the final 2 rounds. Northampton Saints were missing 4 of their first choice backline players and managed to do that. It was in Dublin. It was in Dublin. Northampton Saints, conservatively, their salary spend on their players would be half, probably less than half, of that of Leinster. And they managed to defy all of those odds to come up with a very, very unlikely but incredibly impressive win. We're not quite talking at Japan versus South Africa levels of upset, but it's right up there, certainly with club rugby. I can't remember many bigger upsets than this. And I've already apologised to Northampton Saints fans for being quite so just assuming that Leinster were going to win. What I'm going to try and do on this video is avoid recency bias, because there's a big thing, particularly when things like Lions selection come up. There's a tendency just to go with the last game you remember and make some hot takes on that front. And also, I'm going to try and avoid being too reactionary, generally speaking, because if you didn't have the possibility of having a team winning on any given Sunday or Saturday as it was, then we wouldn't bother playing the games. And the beauty of sport, the poetry of sport, is the fact that any team can have its day. And so trying to make too big a reaction, you know, acting like the sky is falling, I'm going to try and avoid that as well. But I know you'll keep me in line in the comments, so please do get stuck in. I have to say as well, before I get into the actual meat of it, Leinster fans have been absolutely brilliant. Certainly the comments on the channel that I've seen, full of praise for Northampton, humility, and so yeah, fair play for that one, because that must have stung. Leo Cullen, let's start there. Leo Cullen will pay for that. He will pay. And this, I don't think this is me being too reactionary, because this isn't just about the game against Northampton and the disappointment of losing. This is about an accumulation of disappointments and repeated same errors from the man in charge. And the main error that I think people are going to point to that's been an issue in previous years, selection. Think back to when people picked the bones out of the game against Toulouse last year. Now, Toulouse, you know, one of the best club teams we've ever seen. We were saying that about Leinster this year. But they started Josh van der Flier on the bench, which in hindsight, when the margins were so small, you thought, was that a bit of an error? He also rested players for URC semi-finals, and that didn't work for the URC, and you could argue didn't work for the Champions Cup as well. I'll come back to that in a minute. Same errors being made, same lessons. It looked like lessons were being learnt, but maybe, and easy to say with hindsight, maybe the lessons haven't been learnt. I think that's going to cost Leo Cullen. I don't think he'll be in place next season. Selections. I mean, let me get into specifics. Andrew Porter starting on the bench, not a huge surprise. Worked quite well against Glasgow. It's a very South African approach. Have your best players finishing the game rather than starting the game. The problem is, who he chose to start the game. And he went with Cian Healy, who was woefully off the pace. Take no pleasure in saying that because the man is a legend, and his legend status is assured for all the games he's put in for Ireland and Leinster over the years, but he was not up to it. And it's not like Leo Cullen didn't have other options. Jack Boyle could have been picked and wasn't picked, and that was a big mistake. Big mistake. And Andrew Porter coming on after 19 minutes, the one thing I wonder is how much of an impact did that have on the decision that was made towards the end of the game, and I'll come to leadership and decisions, to take a tap penalty rather than a scrum near the end, 5 metres out, when Northampton were down to 7 men. Part of that may have been the fact that Andrew Porter had been on for 60 minutes by that point, not what you would have expected, and maybe 45 or 50 by that point. And so maybe the juice just wasn't there in the tank to go and take them at the scrum time. Also, you have to say, that's an area where I feel sorry for Leo Cullen, because things like the scrum were not good enough from a Leinster point of view. Tadhg Furlong did not have a great game there, and he hasn't quite looked 100% himself. I thought he was getting back to it, but he wasn't quite there. There's not a lot Leo Cullen could do about that. Equally, I'm going to constantly not forget to credit Manny Eogan for Northampton Saints, who has to go on the England tour. What a promising young loosehead prop. And Curtis Langdon I thought was outstanding as well. Stood up to Dan Sheehan, and he should go on the England summer tour as well. But that selection looks bad. Geordie Barrett, a lot has been made of this one. You sign one of the best players in the world and you leave him on your bench for 50 minutes out of the 80, and it just compounded by the fact that Robbie Henshaw did not play well. He had a poor game, put a couple of good tackles in, but other than that was shut down. So the flip side of that, and just trying to be fair to Leo Cullen on this one, we don't know what deals were struck with the IRFU. There's rumours about the one with Snyman not being able to start if James Ryan had been fit. Well, I don't know if there was a similar one with Henshaw. I don't believe there was. But there may have been a reason why Barrett didn't start, but I can't explain it. Henshaw is a really good player and you would expect more from him. But there we go. You make decisions. Or just on the Snyman, so Snyman started. Did he play the whole 80? I think he might have done. He didn't look that great on that 80 as well. So, you know what, the counterfactual you have to take into account as well. So yeah, Leo Cullen, I think he's going to pay. I don't think he'll be in post. He's a nice bloke, lovely bloke. I've been lucky enough to interview him a bunch of times. He's a good rugby man. People have lovely things to say about him, and I'm sure Leinster will keep him in the organisation somewhere. Equally, like Jacques Nienaber, and this is where you have to keep coming back and crediting Northampton Saints, because Jacques Nienaber, his blitz defence looked amazing in previous games. Northampton Saints figured it out. They had an answer for it, and actually, in terms of Leinster's attack, Northampton Saints' defence, just flying the odd man out on their own, completely disrupted the flow of Leinster. So, yeah, there we go. So that's Leo Cullen, number one. Second point, decision and leadership. And again, get stuck in the comments down below. So Caelan Doris went off after 56 minutes. Ooh, just got whacked in the eye by a fly. Caelan Doris went off after 56 minutes. His shoulder wasn't great. That was a big blow for Leinster, because he was one of their talisman. Great player. I'm just going to try and cross the road while I'm talking. I'm going to go down by the river. Honestly, English market towns, nothing like them. I love them, especially on the river, on the Thames. Anyway, Jack Conan was making the decisions, and again, easy to say with hindsight, but turned down kick options to tie up the game late in the match. I've got sympathy with that one, because a lot of teams do this, and also had Jack Conan opted for the penalty kick, and they were difficult kicks, let's not forget, but had he gone for the penalty kick and then Prendergast missed it, everyone would have been moaning, what are you doing? Why did you take the kick? You should have gone for the tap penalty. We were good at that earlier on. So I've got total sympathy with that one. But 7 men you're playing against, 5 metres out, and you don't go for a scrum. It looks silly, but yeah, let me know what you think about those decisions. I think maybe more's been made of those than needs to be. Honestly, look at this. Rowing club over the way. Someone out for a little on their boat. This, honestly, is gorgeous. Anyway, where was I? That's right, too much resting. Too much resting players. Let me give you this stat. Tommy Freeman, he has scored in his last 10 matches. I think he's got something like 15 tries in 10 games, something stupid like that. And that's for club and country. That includes the Six Nations where he scored every single week. 26 appearances he's made this season. 26. And he looks absolutely brilliant. He looks in no way fatigued. He looks razor sharp, in fact. James Lowe, by contrast, his last game, and this goes for many of the Leinster players, many of those Leinster players that played against Northampton in Dublin, the last game of rugby they played was the 11th of April in the quarter-final against Glasgow. And this is, again, it comes back on Leo Cullen. It just looks like a massive error now. It looks like a huge error. And people were saying this before this weekend, but I think you have to say it now. Massive error. Because I don't know. Yeah, the Northampton players play, like Tommy Freeman has played nearly double the number of games as James Lowe. And you can't tell me that it looks like it's cost him in any way, shape or form. James Lowe, just to emphasise it, it's not about James Lowe. I just picked him as an example because he was opposite Tommy Freeman, who's in red hot form. James Lowe has played more games for Ireland than for Leinster. So I think that this... Talk about this with like all sorts of things. You can talk about this with human beings. Your strength is also a weakness. Your strength is also a weakness. Like, I don't know, let me pick a trait. Confidence. Confidence is a massive strength for someone, but it can become a weakness if it goes into hubris and you take things for granted and aren't humble enough at times. It's the same thing, I would say it's exactly the same thing with Leinster. Their squad depth and talent is their strength, but it can be a weakness because the temptation is there to rotate players more than you necessarily need to. James Lowe has played more for Ireland than for Leinster this season. He's only played, that was his 7th match for Leinster. And Leinster can, because their squad is so good, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think this has backfired badly. I think this game, finally, you could say losing in a final to La Rochelle with all their talent, losing in a final to Toulouse, you know, razor-thin margins against world-class stars, you could kind of explain that away. You can't explain this one away. And so I think on that selection point, this is going to be a paradigm shifter. This is going to completely change the game, and Leinster will not do this again. They cannot do this again. They cannot do this again. They have to play their best players more often because you don't need to wrap them in cotton wool to the degree that they are. And maybe it actually helps Leinster, and maybe even it helps Ireland as well. I don't know. But there we go. And finally, let's talk British and Irish Lions. Lots of people are going to be talking about this. And again, I'm going to try and avoid recency bias. I've seen so many articles today. The same people that a couple of weeks ago were saying, wait for Henry Pollock to be humbled by Josh van der Fleer, are suddenly saying, oh, the guy, he's an absolute lion, he's got to go. Some people can be so fickle. Henry Pollock's performance was incredible. So was Tommy Freeman, so was Finn Smith, so was Juano Augustus. Northampton just had one of those days. But I'm going to try and avoid recency bias and be fair. On Leinster, let's focus on them, British and Irish Lions, there were a lot of players who I would say were likely to be picked, but not guaranteed to be picked. And one of those would be Robbie Henshaw, and that could be fatally damaging to him. The thing is, there's not that many players because of Ollie Lawrence's injury. There's not that many players that could nick his spot. Potentially Tom Jordan, potentially Owen Farrell, if he has a big game for Racing. So he'd be one that could pay. Let's go into this park. Jack Conan, I had him in my squad, but that, I mean, it's just the fact that it's so competitive in the back row that could end up costing him. Tyke Furlong, does Finlay Bealham deserve a Lions spot more than Furlong? I thought Furlong was back to his best. Should they take 4 players so you can kind of get Furlong back to where he can be, because he is a game changer when he's on his game, but he's not quite there. Van der Fleer, I have him in, but I think people the narrative has been shifting, and I mean, if that guy never gets a British and Irish Lions tour, it'll be a travesty. So I'm hoping he does go for him, but could I see him not going? I guess I would pick him. But the big one, Sam Prendergast. Sam Prendergast, he was brilliant in the Six Nations when he played for Ireland. He's been great for Leinster. He was not great, and it just so happened he was not great up against Finn Smith, who was inspired. And if you wanted to test someone's mettle for British and Irish Lions, and the psychological and the physical test that there's going to be in a Lions series, have a look at Finn Smith going to Dublin and doing what he did against Leinster. That shows some serious bottle. And so rather than this being a criticism of Sam Prendergast, I'd much prefer to emphasise the fact that Sam Prendergast may end up missing out now, not because he was bad, but because Finn Smith was so good. And I think, you know, I've been someone that's been saying on the channel, George Ford and Owen Farrell, I really think they should be considered one of them for the Lions tour, because it's not an environment where you want to take inexperienced players to go and learn on the job. And I think we saw that the amount of learning that Sam Prendergast will do from that one 80-minute match. Well, he didn't play the whole 80 minutes, did he? Ross Byrne came on. Another decision from Leo Cullen. Some people may agree or disagree with, but the learning that Sam Prendergast will take from that one game is great for him, obviously on a very disappointing day, but it also indicates what I'm talking about. The British and Irish Lions is not a place to go and learn. You don't go and learn on a Lions tour, and certainly it's not the Lions' job to go and be a nursery for Ireland's fly half prodigy, and he is an incredible talent, but I think rather than saying I don't want Sam Prendergast to go, I would say Finn Smith has to go. And I'm also saying it's not a place to learn on the job, so experience is incredibly valuable, so Ford or Farrell come right back into the picture. And therefore, by default, I'm kind of saying Prendergast misses out. There's going to be more talk about this on the channel and everywhere over the next little while, but those are some thoughts. And if I had to summarise, Cullen, gone. Leinster's approach to selection paradigm completely shifted now. Lions 50-50s staying at home. Yeah, let me know what you think.